When it comes to handgun calibers, few debates get gun enthusiasts more fired up than this one: 45 ACP versus 9mm. The FBI said that 9mm is just as good as 45 ACP, but we're here to make the argument that sometimes bigger really is better. Back when John Browning fine-tuned the 45 ACP, the premier arm of the military was the cavalry. Part of their job was stopping opposing cavalry, even if it meant stopping horses. That's why the U.S. Army insisted on something 45 back then. When Roosevelt I and Taft were presidents, they would not accept the new 9mm pistol cartridge that was gaining popularity in Europe. Fast forward a century, and the FBI kicks the 45 to the curb, as the 9mm is as good as the 45 because of bullet construction improvements. Basically, they said the decision was made because they couldn't see a difference. However, today, we're going to prove that the tried-and-true 45 ACP, America's big bore legend, is still the king of stopping power. Going by dates, the 9mm cartridge was actually developed first, so let's start there. The rimless, tapered 9x19mm Parabellum was created by Austrian firearm designer George Luger in 1901. 4 years before John Moses Browning dropped the 45 ACP. Like the 45, the 9mm was designed for a specific firearm, the Luger semi-auto pistol. That's why it was originally given the moniker 9mm Luger, which you still see in use today. It was readily adopted by the German Army and Navy, and the 9mm became the standard German pistol cartridge through World War II. The 9mm went on to be adopted as the pistol cartridge and submachine gun cartridge of NATO and many independent nations. Today, it's the most popular handgun cartridge for many applications, including the military, law enforcement, and self-defense. The rimless, straight-walled 45 ACP, which stands for Automatic Colt Pistol, was designed by Browning in conjunction with the refinement of what would become the Colt 1911 pistol. It was the first cartridge adopted by the U.S. military for its first automatic pistol, the M1911. The round was initially introduced in 1905, an age when semi-autos in the U.S. were considered finicky, underpowered little guns that jammed all the time, because, well, they mostly were. In 1905, after tests and studies, the military came calling for a round equivalent to the 45 Colt for a semi-auto pistol. Browning sized up his prototype 41 caliber round in the pistol he was working on. The result was the Colt Model 1905 and the 45 ACP cartridge. That original 45 was topped with a 200-grain bullet and had a velocity of about 900 feet per second. After further testing with the dominant ammo makers of the day, the standard 45 ACP we know today became a 230-grain bullet with a velocity of 850 feet per second. It hit like a 45 Schofield and was a lot shorter and lighter than the 45 Colt with less recoil. The 45 ACP is one of the few larger cartridges that's actually easy to shoot in full and medium-sized handguns. It has relatively little felt recoil and muzzle flip. It thuds rather than snaps and is easy to control for many shooters, even newbies. This changes when you get into subcompact handguns where the 45 can be a bit of a mule. You'll often hear that a 45 has more stopping power than a 9mm. Instead of getting pulled into silly stopping power or knockdown power debates, what you should know is that a 45 bullet is large and wide with a fair amount of mass that's moving relatively slow. It creates larger wound channels, sending most of its energy into a target, as opposed to a smaller FMJ bullet that'll often punch a hole through a target. The 9mm might expand to as much as the 45 starts out with, maybe even a bit more in perfect conditions, but the 45 is not going to shrink, and it will not be less than 0.451 inch in diameter. And any expansion that happens only makes the difference greater. Keep in mind the word potential, because bullets are not guaranteed to expand. I've talked to a number of people in the various aspects of practical, tactical, and law enforcement shooting, and the percentage of pistol bullets that fail to expand is almost depressing to consider. So if expansion doesn't happen, then we're back to comparing 0.355 inch versus 0.451 inch as the baseline consideration. The differences can be dramatic. There was a recent shooting in Dearborn Heights, a suburb that's contiguous to Detroit. The homeowner realized there was an intruder, and when challenged, the intruder started shooting. So the homeowner responded with gunfire. After a few seconds, everyone involved had been hit by projectiles, even the sleeping girlfriend. The girlfriend and the homeowner were treated at the hospital, while the intruder, hit in the leg by a single round of .45 hardball, required more care. He eventually had to have his leg amputated. And that was with a .45 hardball, no expansion. In real self-defense situations, you might not have time for double taps or follow-up shots. You need that first shot to count. Studies and anecdotal reports from law enforcement and military indicate that .45 ACP is more likely to stop a threat with a single shot, especially with expanding hollow point ammo. With .45, I've seen targets go down faster, especially in close quarters. You feel the hit, you know the threat's over. Not to be gruesome, but ballistic gelatin is a uniform and consistent media, and people are not. It's just that we can test in ballistic gel in a consistent and safe and legal manner. While it seems the world is a 9mm place these days, you'll have no lack of options for ammo and bullet design choices in the .45 ACP. Good old hardball, a jacketed 230 grain round nose has been the standard for over a century, and with good reason. It's accurate enough, and it's ultra-reliable. Most pistols fed most 230 grain hardball loads are going to be more accurate than the shooter is capable. However, if you really need an extra dollop of accuracy, then you can invest in some Hornady XTP loads. They are brilliantly accurate, and they expand. Now, it's a rare 1911 these days that'll balk at 230 jacketed round nose, and with the fierce competition in the marketplace these days, everyone makes a reliable pistol. So you aren't stuck with hardball. However, if you want expansion, or at least the potential, then you can go with Gold Dot. One reason you might want to go with a hollow point bullet is when you're indoors, all handgun bullets penetrate too much on interior walls, but hollow points penetrate less than hardball does. That's worth a thought and some planning. When using a firearm indoors, knowing your target and what's behind it becomes really important. With prudence and planning, you might find that using a .45 ACP means less of your house structure and furniture is cover for the intruder, and more of it's merely concealment. This you actually have to think about, consider, and plan for. Your builder will not be marking the parts of your house as cover and concealment for you. Now I'll share something tactical shooters and survivalists love: suppressed fire. The .45 ACP is naturally subsonic. That means no sonic crack when suppressed, just that satisfying thump. You don't have to use specialty rounds to stay subsonic like you do with 9mm. The .45 is quiet, consistent, and lethal. Perfect for stealth applications, urban survival, or home defense when you need to protect your family without blasting out your eardrums. Another plus is the fact that the .45 ACP operates at lower pressure, around 21,000 psi, compared to the 9mm's 35,000 plus psi. That means less wear and tear on your firearm over time. Your barrel lasts longer, your frame holds up better, especially in all steel or alloy framed guns like the classic 1911. The .45 is just easier on the hardware. And in a long-term survival situation, the longevity of your weapon really matters. Now, Newton would tell us that while more is always more, it costs one way or another. It costs in recoil and magazine capacity. You have to be willing to put up with the recoil of .45 in order to get the power of a .45 caliber projectile. That's not a real problem, as there are a number of female competitors in the USPSA IPSC circuit who are not tall nor heavy and find the recoil of a .45 ACP pistol to be no big deal. If someone who stands at 5'0" and weighs 90 pounds can shoot a .45 accurately and quickly, what's your problem? Capacity's another. A double-stack 9mm can still be very trim and still be manageable, but a double-stack .45, even in the slimmest version, is a big handgun. Remember that the single-stack 1911 pistol has been in continuous production since 1911 for a reason. It holds enough ammunition that you probably won't need more, and if you do, the reloads are mighty quick. Oh, and one more cost that I have to admit to. Actual cost, as in .45 ammunition of any kind, costs more in dollars than 9mm does, if only because there's more material in it. A quick check shows 9mm 115 grain ball in unreloadable steel cases at $200 per 1,000 rounds. Reloadable brass ammo runs $230 per 1,000. Meanwhile, .45 ACP runs $390 per 1,000 in reloadable form. I'll admit that's a bunch more. At the end, you might be wondering which caliber's better for you, the 9mm or the .45 ACP. Well, this might rock your world, but I recommend getting one of each, assuming you have the money. Many shooters like to have the .45 ACP for home defense. It's the perfect grab-and-go handgun to fire in close quarters where recoil won't pose such a problem. Alternatively, the 9mm stopping power and smaller design make it ideal for open and concealed carry. While there are a number of compact .45 ACP models on the market, as a general rule, you can expect the 9mm to be more comfortable to carry in a holster. Also, in a self-defense situation outside of your home, there's a higher likelihood that you won't be firing your gun at close range like in a home defense scenario. In this situation, you'll be glad that you have the faster follow-up speed and larger magazine capacity of 9mm. So is the .45 ACP better than the 9mm? For stopping power, barrier penetration, and sheer impact? Absolutely. It's the round that stood the test of time, trusted in war zones, self-defense scenarios, and by countless professionals who value knockdown over capacity. Yes, the 9mm may be lighter, faster, and easier to control, but when it comes to ending quickly and decisively, the .45 ACP brings a level of authority few calibers can match. Don't get me wrong, 9mm has its place, but if you want uncompromising power, legendary performance, and fight-stopping force, .45 ACP is your answer. Thanks for watching. If you believe power still matters in a world of compromises, then the .45 ACP might just be your round of choice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a shot from Survival Gear.